My name's Phillip Schermer. Unlike many of you in this room, I'm not an MD or a PhD. I'm not a scientific researcher, and I don't have a string of stellar postgraduate academic credentials to recite here. What I am is a marketer and a millennial with a background in the entertainment business who is interested in finding ways to take what I've learned in my business career and apply them in new settings to tackle an issue that I think will be one of the defining issues for people my generation. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about a nonprofit startup that I'm launching called Project Healthy Minds, which is focused on marrying world-class marketing with culture makers, musicians, actors, actresses, athletes, etc., and technology in an effort to change attitudes and behaviors when it comes to the issue of mental illness. And let me just say that many of you in this room are focused on the same thing: how to use communication strategies to change beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors as it relates to scientific issues. I'm just coming from it from the public health lens. But my hope in sharing with you what we're at the very beginning of is that we could sort of take away two things here. One, hopefully something that we're doing or something that we've learned could be useful for all of you in your endeavors. And perhaps something will resonate with you. And so after this talk, if you think it might be worth it, I would love to talk to you, learn about what you're working on, and find some ways to collaborate. So before I jump in, let me share a little color on me so you understand how I got here. I grew up here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There we go. There's always Pittsburghers wherever you go. I spent 4 years learning here at the University of Michigan. There we go. I was waiting for it. I had the chance to live out a childhood dream and take off 6 months of college to go work in the Obama White House on the National Economic Council. And now I work here at BlackRock, studying people's relationship to their money, how it creates stress for them, and trying to build technology and content that nudges people to engage in healthier financial habits. But 9 years ago, I founded a nonprofit at Michigan called Music Matters that organizes a large social impact music festival. And it's through that Music Matters work that I landed here at Birch Coffee in New York about a year ago, meeting up with a friend of mine named Harry Remler, who is a manager to a bunch of top hip-hop artists. And he told me a story over coffee that became the inspiration for Project Healthy Minds. So let me just ask really quickly, by a quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with the hip-hop artist Logic? Oh, wow, more than I thought. Okay, well, for those of you who don't know, Logic is one of the 8 or 10 biggest hip-hop artists in America today. And he released a song in 2017. The title of that song is the phone number of the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That song is about him coming out about his struggle with anxiety and depression. That song saw a ton of commercial success. It went 5 times platinum and was nominated for 2 Grammys, Song of the Year and Music Video of the Year. And before I tell you the story that Harry told me over coffee, we're going to play a quick clip of the song. I think it's important that everyone sees it to understand the origin story here. But the thing that you should keep in mind is that the title of the song is the 1-800 number of the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Lights up. Powerful song, right? The day that song came out, April 27th, 2017, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline saw the second highest call volume in its history behind the death of Robin Williams. A few months later, Logic performed that song at the MTV Video Music Awards, and the hotline saw a 50% spike in call volume. A few months after that, Logic performed the song as the closing set of the Grammys, and the hotline saw a 300% spike in call volume. And when we hit the 1-year mark of the song release, the hotline published a report showing that call volume was up more than 30% year over year. Harry was telling me the story for a different reason, but the way that I heard the story, because of my marketing background, was that the song was really acting like a marketing tactic, right? It was the same as running ads on Facebook or Twitter, but instead of driving traffic to jcrew.com to buy jeans, people are picking up the phone and calling for help. I thought it was a fascinating marketing insight, and so after this coffee, I started to dig into, analytically, what was really behind it. Here's what I learned. There are 615 million people worldwide diagnosed with some sort of mental health condition, the vast majority of which are anxiety disorders and depression. Obviously, there are many more people who are undiagnosed, but if you just look at the diagnosed population, 60% of those people don't get treatment, which to me was mind-boggling. How could it be that 60% of the people diagnosed don't get treatment? When you dig into the research, what you find is that there's three primary reasons. The first is the stigmatization of the health topic. The second is that people don't know where to go to get help. And the third is that they can't access care, insurance constraints, and workforce shortages around the world. If you take a step back and you look at those first two causes, stigma and not knowing where to go to get help, those are marketing communications challenges. And if you think about it in the context of the song, it all begins to make sense, right? Here's a 28-year-old hip-hop artist coming out and testifying to his own personal health struggles, destigmatizing the issue, and the title of the song is the phone number of where you call to get help, right? It makes total sense. And it was at this point that two light bulbs went off for me. One is that I knew from my music experience that there was probably not a single health topic more resonant in the music community or in the entertainment business more broadly that was resonant and prevalent than the topic of anxiety and depression. And the second thing that went off in my head is from my marketing background, I knew you could take that marketing insight and scale it into a full-fledged marketing communications campaign, that you could marry it with culture makers and you could try to move attitudes as it relates to mental illness. And as we dig into the research more, what we've also found was that since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act in 2014, private financing for mental health tech startups has increased more than 10x. You have this big wave coming out of the valley of different forms of treatment via via mobile app for anxiety and depression. Some of it is medically based, some of it is not. But the point is that it's kind of the jungle. And to one of the presentations yesterday, you Google depression test or depression or I'm depressed, and it's the wild, wild west. And what surprised me in digging into this stuff is that what you found is that there was no go-to one-stop digital shop where you go and you figure out, for someone like me, what are the credentialed digital solutions that I could go look at. And so that's basically what phase one of our work is going to be about, which is building this marketing communications platform, marrying it with culture makers, building this digital experience with two primary objectives. One, to change attitudes on the topic of mental illness, to destigmatize the issue. And two, to help drive people to a digital experience where they can find the kind of care that they need. So I'm going to pause really quickly and just share one quick thing, because Deetram said to me, any lessons that you've learned along the way, you should make sure you share them if they're relevant for this audience. If you take a step back at the core of the strategy of what we're talking about using public figures coming out about their personal health issues as a mechanism to create a permission structure for others to do the same. Sounds unique, but there's also historical precedent. If you think about it, Betty Ford, 1974, came out about her breast cancer and got a mastectomy at a time when you did not talk about it. And it led to increases in breast cancer screenings around the country. Whether you think about Magic Johnson as it relates to HIV/AIDS, or Katie Couric, who lost her husband to colon cancer, and some of you may remember in 2000, went on the Today Show and got a colonoscopy live. And as people coined it afterward, it created the Katie Couric effect. Colonoscopy rates in the country went up. Or if you even think about the Me Too movement. A lot of people are like, oh, Me Too started 2 years ago. No, actually, the social concept existed for 4 years, but it was Alyssa Milano and then the news coverage that drove the significant increase. It was the permission structure created by someone that is a relatable, aspirational role model telling you that here is their own personal experience. It's okay for you to share as well. And so the lesson here, as we dug into it, is basically, I was shocked, and I'm no expert. You guys are better at this than I am. But if you look at the research on this field, in this particular space, it's narrow. But there really isn't a robust amount of integrated research, particularly on this topic. And as we think about, in particular, health issues, it seems to me that particularly with the rise of social, this is only going to be more and more important. And so this feels like a great question for the research community to tackle. So then just getting back very quickly, and I'll try to wrap this up so that I'm not too much over time. Phase one of what we're doing, as I mentioned, is about building cultural capacity. Phase two is about building institutional capacity. And the thesis at the core of it is essentially this. Once you design the campaign and you have the full list of celebrities signed up and the people involved, and we've already recruited a bunch of you in the room from the research side. We've recruited a bunch of people from Hollywood. Logic was the first artist in. Once you have all that done, there's convening power and momentum around that work that people want to participate in. And the question is, how do you then harness that energy to think about rolling out a public policy agenda, about using participation in the coalition as an inducement to secure commitments from institutional players in this market, employers, universities, public school systems, going to my employer, BlackRock, and saying, we'd love for you to be part of this, but the condition for participating is that you have to get every employee globally a mental health screening within the next 6 months, right? It's sort of a lead credential. So that's what we're working on at a top line. There's phase 1 and phase 2. We're very early in our work, but thank you all for your time, and hopefully I get to meet some of you afterward.